Welcome to the first ever official episode of Unhinged Christian. I don't have like a soundboard or anything to make the noises yet, but we're gonna get there. Okay. Um, this is just the pilot episode, getting a feeler out there, reading the room, seeing what the people want, giving the people what they need. No, really, I just want to create a community of like-minded individuals or just giving people a space to feel seen and heard. And I think that's everybody's like end goal of a podcast is make people feel like they're not alone. You know what I mean? But more specifically, people that like me in our 20s, um, finding our way to God or navigating our walk with God and still being true to who you are. Like I'm still very much myself and still embodying the practices and lifestyle that God intends for me. But yeah, I just feel like I really need to go on record for one and say that I'm not a preacher. I'm not a Sunday school teacher. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna keep it funky with you every time. So when I get on here talking about the things that I'm gonna talk about, I don't really care about getting canceled because I'm literally just a girl. Right. Please not too much on me. You know what I mean? But today's episode, I just want to go over introducing who I am. So my name's Asia. Um, and I'm 25. I love the Lord. Let's start there. Love the Lord. Real bad. Me and Big Fella, that's my guy. Figuring out how to navigate who I am or who I was and who God needs me to be. And I feel like there's a bridge there that people, from what I've seen, aren't really bridging that gap. Which I will say there are some creators out there that are most definitely sticking true to who they are and still getting that message across as far as like loving God, working for God, and just submitting yourself to His will so that way you can execute what He needs. And through executing what God needs, you will also get what you need. I do feel like there are certain creators on this platform and many others that do a good job of capturing that. I'm just here to add to it. That's all. So yeah, I'm a young woman of Christ, and I was raised in the church and I lost my way naturally because I was raised in the South and church was mandatory. I'm talking about Bible school, Sunday school, the camps, summer camps, choir rehearsal, you name it, we were there. And by we, I mean me and my granny. Yeah. So as I got older, I deviated, I feel like, which many of us have, because it wasn't our choice. And now that I do have the choice to choose God, I feel more empowered in my choice when choosing Him, as opposed to being mandated to go praise the Lord for 3 hours every Sunday and every Wednesday and all the things. So yeah, I am here to talk about my walk thus far, give people a space to talk about their journey and the things that they struggle with. So my two topics for today, I'm coming with the heavy hitters. The first one is going to be the dating realm of being a Christian in your 20s in the era that we live in. And then number two is losing yourself to be who God needs you to be. Ooh. It's audio only, so you can't see, but I just blew the smoke off my guns. um, so first, dating as a Christian, first of all, let's address this. Dating in general, ghetto. Okay. I I have oh, I almost had a stroke just now, mid recording session. But the way naturally we've been raised is that you do all your sinning and you wild out in your 20s, and then somewhere in your 30s, your 40s, you like, I'm gonna give my life to God. And what I love about my generation is we're like, you can be lit and a good Christian, whatever that means in the realms of your relationship with God, because not every good Christian is a good person, but we'll dig into that later. Um, but you can still be young and turned and still be a servant of the Lord. It's just what society standards of young and turned and what the realm of which they may fall under when you are a steward or even just a child of God with who's living intentionally under the guise of God's word. Two totally different things. Two like black and white, backs polar opposites. And I feel as though there's a lot of pressure to be, be lit and be outside and oh da 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 da. Or you'll find that you get a lot more pushback from people who don't really have an established relationship with God, and they don't have that root. They're not rooted in their faith or grounded in their faith and relationship with God. So it's so much easier for them to pick up and sin 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 again, as opposed to someone who is rooted in God and just deep in their faith and they live the things that they digest. They're actually internalizing and living through God. For those type of people, it is so hard to continuously sin because you are so much more convicted. While I'm not saying it is impossible to sin, the conviction that you have from the time that you spend with God and allow him into your life and allow him to navigate and move you, it just makes that conviction solid as a rock. You know what I'm saying? Because it's harder to build a relationship with somebody, and it's like you constantly slapping them in the face. Like, I love being here with you. I love doing this. I love what we're building, but I don't want to do this like this, or I don't want to do this right now, or da 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 da. And it's just like there's no consistency there. And one thing I will say is what I've noticed as well as a byproduct, because you are inconsistent, or we tend to, because myself included, I'm not perfect. We tend to be inconsistent with God, and it puts like a block on our blessings. Like every time we trip up, that's like an extra day or two in between the blessing that he has for us, because we can't stay with him long enough to maintain that long standing relationship. And that's just like regular dating. You want consistency from your partner. You wouldn't tolerate somebody that is inconsistent and pops up and is like, oh, I love you, and then disappears for 3 or 4 days. Oh, I love you so much. Thank you for everything you've done for me. And then disappears for a week and a half. You know what I mean? That is not tolerable in a romantic relationship. So why would that be tolerable or sustaining for your relationship with God? Boom. Bombs. That was me dropping bombs. Sorry. I don't have my sound effects board yet, so just work with me. The budget is it's a little tight. um, but yeah, I feel like recently, even with dating, because I haven't been dating seriously. I just started again, I would say this year, like actually because I have God in my dating now. And not to say that I wasn't dating before because I was doing it without God, but dating and keeping God not even in mind, but ingrained in my principles and my morals, while it is a beautiful thing, a beautiful thing, what I have noticed is that there will be so many adversaries sent to peck away at your morals and everything that you've established with God. And that I feel like we ask God, okay, if you give me this, I'll do this. Everything's very transactional. And I will say, I did go to God and I was like, hey, Bikami, Mama want to start dating. He's like, I got you. When you go to God and you ask for things, we often don't keep in mind the challenge. you have to understand the type of God that we serve. He's not just going to give it to you. He's going to make sure that when you have it or when you do get it, you know how to maintain it. So he's going to send you trial dummy, test dummy after test dummy after test dummy to test you and to test your capacity and your bandwidth as far as you and your faith and you and your morals and you and your principles before he can actually, okay, because you have consistently, that's the key word today, babes. Consistency, consistently, because you have consistently shown me that this is not just something you're saying, that this is how you're living, that you've read my word, you've heard my gospel, and you're living it out because that's who you are and not to gain something. Now I can bless you because you are working within my will. That's what a lot of us don't understand, child. We want God, please give me a man. God, please send me a wife. Da 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 da. God will send you exactly what you're asking for. But because you're already operating for or in it outside of his will, it will never be, which is why you have dud after dud after dud after dud, because anything outside of God's will is never going to work. If you find yourself fighting for a relationship, fighting for a friendship, not to say that things come with ease, but people who are meant to be in your life will come with peace. They will come with compromise. They will come with understanding. They will come with empathy. They will come with remorse, with delicateness and gentle auras and energy. That's godlike. If you got to deal with somebody that's constantly like, rah, 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 well, I don't like this and you don't do that, and just constantly stressing you out and all this other stuff, I ain't be the one to break it to you. That ain't of God, baby. And it sucks because a lot of us, and when I say us, I mean, people in our mid 20s, early 20s, mid 20s, we find ourselves stuck in that cycle because either one, that's what we've seen growing up. Two, that's what we've exposed ourselves to for years. So that is what we know to be love and what we know to be normal. Or three, we just settling. But if you go in your word, you will see that the love that you think you need from people, you can get it from God. And once you attain that God-like love, it will literally blind you to the love that you think people, it won't even look like love. You'll get that love from God, and then you'll look at what people have to offer and you're like, wow, it's like your discernment just punches you in the face. Like, that's not love. And then you'll be able to really call things and see things for what they are. Like, you're just trying to use me. You're just trying to da, 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 da. And not to say you have to say these things out loud, but your ability to discern and observe these things and then act accordingly based off of the love that you've received from God, the love that you've built and invested with God, is going to position you to move accordingly and make a more sound decision, as opposed to the desperation of, and I'll say desperation because yes, it does have a negative connotation, but it's the truth, the desire rather, or the need to be with someone and companionship. While I understand we are humans and yes, we do desire companionship, literally is a part of human life, I get that. But to be reliant on companionship from someone else as opposed to being satisfied with what God has already given you is the biggest disconnect that I have seen. So that's part one, these. And then we're coming in steaming hot with part two of today's podcast, Deanna. And that is losing yourself to find who you are with God. So losing your identity, losing the life that you lived prior to incorporating God and incorporating Christ to then further expand your life with God. I feel like this is very important because although this is a generation of we love the Lord, da 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 da, also we could be a little stubborn in the things that we need to let go of and really embracing, like, okay, if I'm going to be a true servant of God, a consistent servant of God, if I'm going to show up in the capacity and the spaces that He requires of me, I have to be willing to not only turn my back on the things that I used to indulge in and the way that I used to live, but also run away from that. Um, Currently, I go to Courageous Church in Tampa, Florida. Shout out to my pastor, Pastor Ontario, Crystal Green. Love them down. He had a sermon and he talked about the story of Elijah and Elisha. And the message there, which I loved, was not only did Elisha like turn his back on everything that he knew because of how convicted he was by God and the message that he received. But he also ran from that because he did not want to be in the same vicinity of what he knew. He burned everything that he knew to be true about his life at that moment and ran towards what God had for him. And that speaks numbers because that is literally what you have to do to fully engorge yourself in God and His will over your life. You have to not only be able to turn around from the things that you know, turn your back on the bad habits or habits in general that you know are not conducive and don't align to the life that you want to live. You got to be able to burn it and run, because if you do stay close to it, and all it takes is one minor inconvenience, and you can just reach back to what you know. I feel like comfortability kills progression in any aspect, but especially in your walk with the Lord. You doing all of this shucking and jiving and being grown, and then you're like, you know what? I'm building my relationship with God, and this is no longer serving Him or me. So I need to stop doing this. But because this is something that maybe you've been doing 5 years, 10 years, your whole life, it is not so easy to turn away from something and cold turkey it and not constantly be reverting back. So, in order to keep yourself from being in the same space and repeating habits that your heart desires to get rid of, but your flesh is still weak to, you have to burn it, literally. Like, you have to find that conviction or be convicted enough, which it comes in different forms for everybody. But once you have that conviction, it is one thing to have it, but to have it and to work through it and execute what it is you know to be right, and I'm using air quotes, right or wrong, due to your conviction, is what separates you from your growth and expansion with God. And honestly, not a lot of us are willing to turn our back on the things that we know because we love these things. And outside of them probably being the only thing that we know, we have grown attached to them. We are comfortable with them. We are complacent with them. And it holds up a lot of the progress that we could have as people, because alongside all of those things that I just named, it's also a bit of fear. What if I do let go of this thing, this proven method that I know works, and this way that I know how to be? This is how I've been, and look how far I've gotten. But look how far you've gotten without God. Oof. If you can execute, and get this far without God, imagine where He can take you. Imagine what He could give you and what you could do with it by having Him incorporated in your decision making and having Him be there to receive the praise of how you're excelling and what you're excelling with. Um, because a lot of that is, oh, well, I've been doing it this long. Why do I need God? And that's just pride. You didn't make this happen. We didn't make the earth, baby. I know I did it. I didn't have anything to do with the coming together of the dirt and the plants and the fish and the water and the seas. You know what I mean? So it's just like, who am I to take credit for something that God did? And it's the same thing with the accomplishments in my life. I have to give all the glory to Him first, because without Him, there those doors wouldn't have been opened. I could be the hardest working person in the world. I could be all of these things, but there is always going to be a level or a cap on my successes because I am hyper focused on accomplishing these things without God, that I have boxed myself in. And that's what we tend to do. We create these boxes and we're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this much amount of money and da 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 da. And you're putting yourself in such a small box because it's being done without God, a- as opposed to you opening up your heart and creating space for God and allowing that space that you create to God to be an investment and watch Him create a space for you in rooms that you never thought you'd be in, with companies you never thought you'd be working with and not for. It's just so deep. And all of that at its root is you have to be willing to lose your identity and obtain the identity that God has for you, who He needs you to be, and doing His work. Because if it is supposed to be, then it will happen regardless, with God by your side. So if what you're doing is already in alignment with God and literally your missing piece is your prayer with Him, asking Him for permission for things, incorporating Him in your decision making, being able to give Him all the glory and the praise for when you do win it and when you do fail, you still need to be able to acknowledge God and when He tells you no, because He's going to. That's something that needs to be understood early on. God is going to tell you no. And instead of pouting like a child about it, you need to be able to reconcile with that and really dig deep and spend more time with Him to understand why it wasn't your time for that right now. Because we always get down the road and we're like, I'm so glad God didn't give me that opportunity, or I'm so glad that door was shut. And that's how we frame it. I'm so glad that door was shut. No, that was God saying, not yet. More times than not, if it is of God's will, it is never truly a no. It's usually a not right now. And as you further your relationship with God, you understand that not right now are to better prepare you, because when it is your time, it won't be a question. You'll flow into what is for you seamlessly because God has prepared you. He's made you be patient. He's made you work in a different way, as opposed to, I'm just gonna hustle, get it out the mud, get it out the mud. I can do this and I can do that. Instead of that grind mentality, you are like, okay, God has given me this. Let me see how I can maximize my time and space in this role that God has given me. Let me see who I can get under and learn from, so that when I do step into that next role, whenever God is ready for me to, it's not anything that I'm unfamiliar with. No, we want everything how we want it, and impatient, and we are prideful, and we are sinners. And that is okay, because we are able to repent, and repenting and then creating that space for God. And as you maximize that space for Him in your heart and in your life, watch how your blessings and your opportunities maximize. Now, not to say that in a transactional tone, but that's the gist of it. Give God your all and watch what He'll do for you. Even if your all is $2, give God your all and watch what He does for you. Watch how He provides. Watch how He turns your $2 into 20,000 to start your business. Give it to Him. You have to be able, we. I don't like that I say you so much, because I don't like to talk at people. I like to incorporate myself in the conversation. We need to be able to let go, as much as we want to be in control and we want to take the accountability for our successes. As happy as I am to be like, I've done this and this and this, also in the same tongue, I won't let a second go by without saying, because God allowed me to, or because God presented me with the opportunity. It's never, I did this for myself. No, I didn't open that door. There's a lot of rooms that I'm not physically in that God is preparing for me, and it's preparing for you. But if you don't have that established foundation with Him, He's not going to give it to you, Pooks. He's going to create it. I will say that He will create it. But if you ever make it there, it will be because, or it'll be due to you. Like, making it to the space and the rooms that He's prepared for you is solely on you. It's solely on us. So once we grasp that and really operate in that, I feel like we'll be so much further. So yeah, thank you. That does conclude today's episode. Thank y'all for tuning in to episode 1. Eek. I wouldn't even say that I'm scared about doing this. It really feels natural. I really hope, we got some people that want to join in, listen to you girl yap about the good Lord. Because it's gonna get deep this season. We're going to tackle a lot of stuff that traditionally you don't speak of in terms of Christianity and in terms of a relationship with God or God in general. Um, I'm going to press a lot of buttons. I don't even want y'all to be surprised. I might piss a few people off. That's the goal, because minds need to be expanded. If we are all God's children, we need to learn how to love each other like God's children, and not in a sense of, well, if you do this, this, and this, then we'll love you. Or if you're this way, then we'll love you. Or you do this, so shame on you and you're going to hell. And no. But like I said, we got plenty of time. Plenty of time together. Okay, well, that concludes, for real this time, the first episode of Unhinged Christian. I will see y'all next week. And when I say see, I mean here, because I'm not recording no videos right now. But yeah, tune in next week as well. You know what it is. Bye.